who I'm going to let introduce himself because nobody can do it just.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Lawrence Henderson from Business Operational Support, LLC, aka Boss. How's everybody doing today?
So excited to have you here and do this with you. So for people who know, I've been doing like a weekly video for several months, but it's mostly just been me yakking about whatever, I was in the mood to yak about. And it was, kind of fun until I got tired of listening to the sound of my own voice. And I like the sound of Lawrence's voice way more. So what we decided was we're going to, get on here together and maybe do a little coaching mystery box and see if we can toss out topics to see.
Yeah. So, thank you, first of all, for thinking of me to do awesomeness with. And I have a doozy for you today. Yes. Mystery box number one. How do you navigate through shame?
Oh man, you went straight for the heart of 20 years of Brene Brown work. Holy mackerel. Okay. Well, this is a tough one, right? Because nobody has great natural inclinations when we're in shame. Like that brings out the worst in everyone.
Yeah.
So what I would say is on just a pure, like, what have I learned as I've gotten older and hopefully a little wiser is actually something that Brene Brown talks about. It's recognizing your own physical symptoms so that you stop yourself from opening your mouth. Because my inclination, because I'm a talker, is to speak first and regret later. Nothing prompts that. So recognizing that for me, it's usually a pit in my stomach and I can feel my skin getting hot. My palms will get clammy. And so the fact, just keeping the presence of mind to recognize those symptoms and deep breath, count to 10 and defer commentary. It's just, for me, that's been the most important one because my biggest, most regrettable decisions all came from a moment of just acting impulsively. In shame. So for me, shame will usually show up as anger, right? So a lot of people will retreat and upset or turn it on themselves, and I come out swinging baseball bat, and I make a mess when I do. So
Wow. So I take a different spin on it, right? I come from a place of I'm not apologizing or regretting anything. And so what someone would categorize it should be shame, I rationalize it. I 100% make it a part of everyday life. And it's and up until lately some of the work you're talking about is a lot of self-awareness, right? And it's being present to know that, that just wasn't productive. Where in rationalization, you have I was more susceptible to repeating things because I was making it okay for myself to live in that world. And then I got even worse with the shame. I began to compartmentalize success. And so so I was never addressing anything. I was making a humongous triple stuffed Oreo out of this stuff where I would have a couple successes. I would do some real good work on some attitude adjusting things and speaking better to people. But then I had this stuffing and it just the Oreo was becoming huge, and then throw a success in there, sandwich that baby together. And I was like, you know what? It makes sense for me to have that big of stuffing and that mush of all this mess that I didn't want to deal with, because let's be honest, I just didn't know how to navigate it. I wasn't taught how to call it out. First, give it a name, right? What is it? Where does it come from, right? Your anger, right? That's a feeling, that's an attitude, that's an emotion. Call that thing out, but then where did it come from, right? And once I began to coach in that and be present to why I did that, why did I react that way? And was it the high school coach who didn't see me correctly, or I invested so much energy in their affirmation and it carried so much weight, and when I didn't get it, it just repeated itself over time. And now as a professional, I identified with not getting something. from someone versus being, like you said, getting to that point where, and I love Brene Brown's work as well, and talking about vulnerability and shame. But getting to that place where it's like, okay, it's okay not to be okay.
Yep.
But I'm not going to stay here, and making a decision to get out of it.
So that's the part that I love. And this is why I adore the crap out of you, dude, because you and I both have okay, it's one thing to not be sure how to proceed when you haven't figured out what's really going on, right? You haven't dug in. Once you know, no excuses
At all.
Deal with that. And that to me has been like, that's the thing that I love about getting older, right? Like I can look back when I was in my 20s and I can see how I reacted to things in the moment, and I was super volatile. And you know what is, like, I didn't understand, to your point, I didn't understand what was triggering me or what I was trying to prove. And now I look back and I'm like, oh geez, like the pattern is so clear.
Oh my gosh.
All dimensions of my life. But now I'm like, no, I know what my biggest triggers are. So when I start realizing that my palms are getting clammy and I have not, it's not a hard stretch for me to pinpoint what it was that just happened. And especially now that I'm clear about the things that will instantly just shut, like I go into lizard brain mode because they drive me to such an emotional extreme so quickly. I know to call a timeout. So one of the best things I learned in my in my marriage actually, was to use a code word when I'm like, with the point of being, I'm too emotional. And so that doesn't obviously work with everybody, but with the people in my life where we're involved in complicated stuff, when I feel myself hitting that point where, okay, I cannot have rational, productive conversation. Like I want to show up curious and genuine and compassionate and empathetic. And I don't want to be a jerk, which I'm capable of being like anybody else. You know, I'm okay now saying, you know what, this is a really important conversation and I want us to have this, but I need 10 minutes because I gotta close my thoughts, and I don't want to say something that is harmful and serve our greater purpose. And I think that I could never have done when I was younger. God, that's so much time and effort and messing shit up.
Well, and here's the thing that I would say to anybody that's out there that's looking for, you know, a higher understanding. It's seeking to understand, right? It's taking that position of, what did I say that made Alora need to take a timeout? Right? And then when we come back together, when you've had your break, right? And again, understanding whether you're relationship coaching or anything like that, understanding what a timeout is and why and what was said. So when you come back together, what was it about the thing I said or the activity that happened that you needed to take a timeout? Because again, when we're processing through shame, when we're processing, navigating our own mess and mush, we don't stay present to the assumption that somebody else understands what I was processing. Right? And so when we say timeout, they're really timeout and they're really waiting to come back to the conversation. But what needs to happen in any communication, whether it's in the corporate world or in relationships, both people need to remain present to ask powerful and insightful questions so that, and again, at the end of the day, we get angry when we don't feel heard, I don't feel listened to. And again, particularly people who are navigating through shame, they've already compiled a list of things that they haven't done right, haven't gone well for them in life and business and all the rest of these things. And I'm already guarded, right? I've already built up these walls. And then when you aren't present for me, it makes it worse. You begin to feed the gremlin at midnight, and they're turning into these crazy animals that are scrambling around my brain, and I'm living in a perpetual world of confirmation bias. It's just constant. And it's like, how do I get off of this wheel of just, that's all I can describe it. If that was a word, that's what it would be written out. It would just be one word like that, right? And it's, God, I love it.
Well, I mean, I love what you just said too, because confirmation bias is one of those things we talk about like in very businessy context.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what, like, our shame, all of our shame triggers are so about that. It is
Exactly.
something else confirming our worst belief about ourselves.
Boom.
And it's like, oh my God, and there's a reason
Yeah.
that other people don't realize they're triggering it by doing something sometimes super benign. And all
Exactly.
you're like, whoa, that was an outsized reaction
Yep.
and it was, you just completely showed me
Yeah.
all the stuff I hate saying about myself.
Man. And so I call that and again, you probably say it too, it's the baggage, right? It's the emotional baggage, it's the work hurt, church hurt, work hurt, whatever organizations you've had, organizational hurt. You're just dragging dead bodies behind you in every single relationship, that things that you haven't cut loose and you can't figure out why momentum is slowing down. Well, just turn around and look. Like all the things you have behind you that are keeping you from your best life. And it's one of those scenarios where when we begin to do the work, and again, I can't stress enough, it's as simple as take time to journal, to write down, to communicate with yourself. Uh-oh, got my doggy.
So while Lawrence is taking care of the dog.
Yeah, my bad, y'all, my bad. That's craziness. But yeah, she wanted to get in on the work hurt thing. She was all over it, right?
Me too.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, like, and I think for me, one of my vulnerable moments was, identifying that I thought I was really good at leading people, but I led from a place of my strengths, and I didn't lead out of my weakness, and allow people to be for me what I wasn't, and overlap strength, right? And so from that, empathy was a word I couldn't spell, nor could I, pronounce it very well. It was like throwing up anytime I said it. It was like empathy. But I had a friend tell me it's like a two-edged sword. It's cutting going in and it's cutting coming out. And the old definition for me was being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and, connect with them that way. And I was like, and then as I began coaching, I was like, that's the dumbest definition of empathy. Like, I'm like, what? Who made that a thing that I could put? I said, I've never been a woman, never been a white woman. I don't think I ever will.
You think?
So how can I say I'm a Laura? Like, how can I know what a Laura's shoes feel like? Like, I'm gonna hold the space for a Laura, and I'm gonna let a Laura know I'm present.
So
go ahead.
So I love that part, because empathy is something that is a huge struggle for me. Like I do a lot of work with Gallup, and empathy is one of the strengths that they chart, and mine is like low, bottom of my list, like literally bottom of my list. And so it's funny because like I work with clients who have really high empathy, and I watch how they naturally absorb and instantly feel like so much genuine emotion for someone else, especially if they're going through something tough. And I watch that and I'm like, wow, that's so cool, really? But like, I don't, for me, it's a very intellectual kind of exercise. And so when I was actually going through coaching, the first time I went to take my final, I got dinged because like, you weren't empathetic enough.
Wow.
And the irony was that coaching session was with someone that I actually do feel an abnormal amount of empathy for, but I just wasn't doing a good enough job of expressing it. And it's a really hard thing, I think, to understand sort of, to your point, right? What does empathy really mean to you? And as a coach, because, we've all worked with different coaches who have very like soft and maternal kind of like, and it's like,
I can't stand those.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, I think they're amazing people, but that's not the right coach for me. Like, and if somebody wants that in a coach, they're not going to come to me at all. Or you, right? And that's one of those things, though. But that doesn't mean we can't be empathetic. It just means that we have a different way.
For sure.
That. And I love that point, because to your original question, right? Shame requires empathy. You have to give somebody space to work do that stuff.
Yeah. So you teed up giving someone permission not to have sympathy, but
Yeah.
empathy,
For
right?
themselves.
For
Like
themselves.
themselves, which is
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah. Right. Because again, so you fight, am I rationalizing this or am I being empathetic to myself? Right? Because again, it could spiral out of control if you're being woe is me. Again, we know from energy leadership coaching, it's that catabolic get out of your own way type of stuff, and then you transition anger and get out of that to that higher level of, okay, how is this serving me? What am I missing out on as a result of me staying here? Once you identify this stuff, how can we begin to move through it? And one of the biggest things that I always tell people about my journey and my story of transition is I had to give myself permission to be great at every facet of life, not just compartmentalized success that I was happy with, I was cool with, but now permission across the board.
That's so hard. And for me, that's actually probably the greatest. And Brene Brown actually, again, talks about this as like the work of middle age, right? The redefining and reinventing and realizing that your old priorities don't necessarily serve you anymore. You were putting all your energy over here, and it turns out actually over here might be more meaningful. And I think it's so hard to grant yourself that permission back to being empathetic with yourself. When I left the country to go traveling around Latin America, last year, it's the thing I had wanted to do since I was like 6 years old. Like, wow. Seriously, I used to watch Remington Steele and be like, oh, I want to do that. I just want to like travel the world and like, do whatever I want and be completely free all the time. Like, and I got this like 6-year-old fantasy in my head, and I spent, the better part of 40 years chasing it. And then when I got on the road, I felt lonely, and I was like, where the hell did that come from? Like, no. Power through, man. You're gonna do it. You got rid of almost everything you owned. You sold the car you loved. You gave up your home. Like, you left the country. You did everything. You arranged your business so you could travel. You are traveling, God damn it, and you are not gonna stop. And like, I did that for like 6 months, and I'm like, and finally I was like, what am I proving to whom? Like, dude, I want to go home and like be back in like a space where I can build community and have those relationships. I had to actually be empathetic with the fact that the goal and the reality did not match.
Wow.
Because I accomplished the goal. I did what I needed to do to hit the goal, but the goal wasn't.
Man, so what I love about that, and I'm just be honest, I don't know if I was the only one out there that I was loving every last one of your pictures, every last one of your updates in that 6-month period. And I was like, and the crazy part about it is you talk about being lonely in a relationship. I was like, oh my God, that would be a great place for me and my wife to go. Oh my God, that's another good place for me and my wife to go. But when you first told me that about that feeling, but everybody else, oh man, Alora's living her best life. But then if you're not being authentic, if you're not living your true self, you like, you know what? I can continue doing this because maybe I'll get to happiness. Maybe I'll get to happiness because who else has this opportunity, right? And rationalization keeps coming right back around. And the funny thing is whose life are you living? And again, in shame and bringing that back around to empathizing and holding that space for yourself is authenticity is giving yourself permission to be really who you are, right? And again, that's some really, really foundational work that you got to do. You got to lay yourself a solid foundation. And had you not done that work years ago, you would still be traveling your tail around the world.
And that's, I think, the thing that I keep coming back to is, and it's what I love about working with you and everybody else that we got the chance to meet, because I cannot imagine what that 6 months of figuring out that no, this actually is not what I thought it would be if we hadn't done all the work that we had been doing. And it was so much of the right work at the right time, and meeting the right people that helped challenge me and help I had somebody 2 years ago say, doesn't sound like you're in the habit of being very empathetic with yourself. And that was just on the eve of my whole like life falling apart and me tearing everything down. And
Wow.
that line has been in my head so many times because
Wow.
right, like I never had any empathy for myself at all. I had
Wow.
goals, checklists, I had shit that needed to get done. I had
Yep.
catch and I had a dog to feed and I had
Yeah.
stuff to do, but I had
Yep.
no for me or
Wow.
anybody else. And it's been
Yeah.
really tough to make that space.
Whew. So I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Say I'm starting out, right? What does that work look like from the beginning?
Experimenting. I think when I work, especially when I work with like new grads or about to
Yeah.
graduate, just youngins who have like an idea,
Yeah.
and some of them have a lot of pressure from family or their own financial need or whatever to go out and find a job and build a career and like be successful,
Yeah.
and they're not yet aware that you know what you gotta try this, and if
Yeah.
that doesn't be okay switching gears and trying that, and then you
Yeah.
and like because the thing is that how many things did you have to sort of taste test before you knew whether you liked them or not?
Exactly.
And if you
Wow.
only stick with the thing you started after, how do you know you don't know what you don't know?
For sure. For
Which is
sure. No,
the line
that's the whole thing, right?
exactly. How do you know what you don't know
Yep.
until you try stuff? But again,
Yeah.
to your point, that's why it's important to be so empathetic with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And you're gonna fall on your face.
say it again.
Fall on your exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And
Ooh.
it was like the video you just posted on Instagram yesterday, right?
Yeah.
You got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
100%.
If there
100%.
was one thing that I could go back and tell 24-year-old Delora, it would be, girl, figure out how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because I
Yeah.
was so committed to being comfortable. I was comfortable at work. I wasn't comfortable dating. I wasn't comfortable in my personal life. I wasn't comfortable coming up with making good choices in that side of my life.
Yeah.
Was easy. It gratified, my ego. It was a place to stay focused, and I could compartmentalize that and ignore and neglect everything else.
Yes. So and again, and you reference that video I posted yesterday because I'm rereading Dare to Lead, and right at the beginning in the intro, Brene just swings and hits you in the face with the bat, talking about comfort being the epitome of privilege,
Yep.
and just I mean, and again, that line, I had to sit. I'm like, because before, you read it like just to digest it. I read it. Yeah, it's a great book. Woo. But now I'm like, oh my God, where's that note at? I didn't write that down the first time I read this. Like, she's right. Like, how dare you say you want more, say you want to be successful, and you're not willing to do the work, right? You're not willing to show up every single day and face what needs to be faced to be what you need to be for this world. And one of my fears in life is not being in position to help someone because I got comfortable.
That's okay. So that is a truly awesome, awesome thing to hear. So I'm in a new relationship, and the guy's he's awesome, and I'm really happy. But he was talking about how there were things that he's kind of worried about telling me. Like he doesn't necessarily want to tell me that I'm wrong about something. Like he's getting the hang of me and trying to figure out like what's going to be, what's not. And I stopped him and I said, look, I said, just to be clear, I said, my goal in life is to get better at anything, at everything, at all things. Like it's a state of constant improvement. That is my objective. So as long as I believe that in the well-intentioned nature of your feedback, I'm not going to freak out or, completely like take your head off or anything else. I said, if I have reason to doubt your intent, then we might start finding ourselves in some emotionally complicated frame. But I don't have a reason to doubt that you are well-intentioned in your feedback. So I would rather know, and I would rather just trust that you have my back and that that your interests are mine, and that, it's to help me get better at whatever it is I'm trying to do. And he looked at me, he's like, wow, that's so refreshing.
So, but But that's a real thing for people, right? Whether it's in personal relationships, at home, or at work, where we spend a lot of time with people, right? And it's who has permission.
But it gets back to your original question, because a lot of times what people are reacting to is shame.
Oh,
So your partner pointed something out and it's a shame trigger for you, and all of a sudden you explode and they're just like, dude, I was just trying to help.
exactly, right? Or to his point is, no, that went wrong last time I did that.
Yeah.
Right? And not take accountability and responsibility to be present in the current relationship, right? And so for people out there, that's a bias when a scenario presents itself and you use those context clues and all that other stuff that kept you safe and it was successful in the past. I'm going to use that in this relationship in this moment. You just robbed yourself of the opportunity to stay present.
Right. And again, this is to me so like such an awesome thing. You know, I like 45 next week. I never thought I would be this happy at this point in my life, but it's because of stuff like this, right? It's because I wouldn't have had this conversation in fact, I didn't have this conversation when I was starting to see someone when I was younger. Like it never would have occurred. I didn't have the language for it. Even if I had thought about it, like I didn't have the ability to articulate it. And so for us to, be sitting out on the patio watching the sunset, and like have this conversation was, God, getting older is just, there's so many things that they're amazing gems that I never imagined, ever.
Yeah. And I would say, Alora, in this time today, of all of this internet and all these opportunities to share the gifts of life and just the nuggets that life has given you, I think it's a responsibility of ours to lay it out there for people, and as coaches, as leaders of people, to show them what getting comfortable with being uncomfortable looks like. It's the vulnerability of it all, to where, yes, I can be humble, open, and transparent every single day. And it doesn't have to sound like the National Enquirer. Like it's my mess, but I could lay it out for you in such a way that it hits you where you are, and you get some nuggets from it, and you can live your life at a better pace, and actually increasing capacity. Because for us, we have more to learn. We have more to experience. And if we keep hoarding all the other crap, we actually don't even create capacity and room for ourselves to learn new stuff. And so I love just, you want it, give it. Right. And so I love that you created this platform for us to just give and get it out of us, because shame, for me, it's a fun topic. Ooh, that didn't sound
good. So you're the one who actually hopes you sit next to Brene Brown on an airplane. So.
Yes. Oh my God. Hey, put it out there. Put it out there in the spheres. I want to sit next to Brene Brown on the airplane for like the longest flight across country. Like, that's what I want. Like I would veg out. Oh my God. I'd be like, oh my God, can we talk about shame and vulnerability the whole time? And it's just like, oh my God, that would be, man, I wouldn't, like, do you have to get off the plane? Can we talk?
You'd be carrying her bags and her kids.
Exactly. It's like, dude, I don't know where you're going, but I'm on vacation. So
yeah,
great talking to you. All right.
Yeah, what time you say that? I'll meet you on the beach in the morning.
Oh my gosh. That would be all time. That's bucket list. That's up there. With I got about 3 other people on that list too, but Brene Brown's, she's definitely at the top.
Her work has been transformational for me. I don't know where I cannot imagine the last 2 years of transforming everything about my life without coming back to her work over and over.
Yeah. That's awesome. So if you had to wrap this up, you would say what about our time together as we talked about shame?
Well, that I always love talking to you. I also love the fact that you picked a topic that has so many tentacles in so many directions, and everything comes back to it, right? Shame is, as Brene Brown always says, it's universal. Like, we all experience it. It shows up, in every aspect of all of our lives in one way or another. And if you don't learn to deal with your own, you just inflict it on other people, which is unfortunate and uncool. It also doesn't help you get it under control. I mean, you're going to be
Yeah.
its bitch if you do that, and you will be stuck like that
Yeah.
for that doesn't sound like fun to me at all.
At all. At all. I mean, another hard word to put on it is you become slave to it, and you begin giving it the best parts of you, and which leaves no room for anybody else. And so you got to call this stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so, so true. And when I look back when I was younger, I see the points in my life when I did exactly that.
Yeah.
And there were points at which I felt like I had the fewest options and I was not in
Mm,
control of my circumstances, or I couldn't take control of my circumstances enough. And it was because I was so driven by specific shame triggers and allowing other people to sometimes to deliberately just poke that bear.
wow.
That completely, I mean, I ended up being a puppet. And that's really what happens. Like you turn into a puppet
Wow.
for someone else to be able to manipulate if you don't figure out how to just tear this stuff apart for yourself and really dig into it.
Man, that's awesome. Golly, thank you, Alora, for coordinating this greatness.
Well, I am totally loving the idea of doing this on a regular basis. So we will plan same time next week. We might try switching up to YouTube, see if that
Yeah.
works.
Yep.
But we'll kick it around either way. I love getting the chance to do this, and I am coming up with an awesome topic for you next week. And we're
Thank you. That sounds good. I love this verbal combat.
Me too. It's awesome. It's awesome. All right, my friend, thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic evening.
All right, you as well, Laura.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.